Hey, it's me, James, and in this video, I'm going to be doing a lightning round card pull reading for every sign in the zodiac. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this special lightning round card pull video. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if you're a returning visitor and viewer, I'd like to say welcome back. So what inspired today's video? Well, today is March the 7th as I'm filming this, and it is my birthday. So I wanted to do two different things. Number one, I wanted to work with one of my newest Oracle card deck creations. If you're no stranger to these videos, then you know that over the last few years, I spent a lot of time and energy making my own Oracle card deck. So this is actually the first one for 2023, and I'm very excited about it. It's different in a way from my previous Oracle card deck, so I'll talk more about it in a moment. And I also wanted to kind of extend this as a birthday offering to you, right? Normally, the birthday person involved, I mean, in this case, me, would receive, either kind words, salutations, blessings, or even gifts on my birthday, but I wanted to do something different. I wanted to kind of maybe pay it forward in a different way. So that's the reason for the video. Okay, so now the deck in question that we're going to be working with. Like I said, it's my newest Oracle card deck creation, and it is called the Re-Language Affirmation Oracle. So a little bit about this. I was inspired to create this deck. I don't know how many of you are inspired to create if you're a deck creator, but this deck was inspired by Kyle Gray's Raise Your Vibration Oracle. And normally I'm not one for those types of decks, where the art consists mostly of words. I tend to be a very visual person, and I like imagery with my decks. But this particular deck was different to me anyway, because Kyle Gray called it word art, and so I found it very interesting, so it intrigued me enough to purchase it. And so I started posting some of the cards on Instagram from his deck for my daily divination poll. And if you are checking me out on YouTube, you can also see those same card pulls on my community tab on my channel, because I share the same information there. Okay, so I started doing that, and one person commented thinking that it was a deck that I had made. I took that as high praise, that a deck that Kyle Gray and the artist Ari Wasner created, somebody thought was something that I did. But it inspired me to think of, like, if I was to create an affirmation deck, what would my deck look like? And so that was all the inspiration I needed, and you're seeing the result here. So it's called the Re-Language Affirmation Oracle. It consists of 52 cards, and my intention for the deck was twofold. Number one, that you could work with the affirmative statements on the card, either daily or if you pull a card weekly, just to kind of plant the seed. Really, for me, an affirmation is a statement that sets an intention to create some kind of change in your external world, right? But it starts with the mind, right? Because you're taking it in and you're contemplating on it, you're thinking on it. In some cases, you're speaking it, right? And so, but all of that is to set the stage for some kind of change to take place in your outer world. So that was it. So again, my intention was to either work with the cards daily, you pull a card a day, or you pull a card a week, and then there's 52 cards in the deck, so you could hopefully, maybe without repeats, work with the deck over the course of the year if you were to pull one card every week without any repeats, right? So there's that. But because I'm such a visual person, I also wanted it to be like an oracle, like you could work with it as an oracle regardless of the statement on the card. So that's what I'm going to be doing with you all now. Since it's my birthday, I figured the easiest way to do this so that everybody feels like they've gotten some kind of message that may be speaking to them directly is that I would work with each sign of the zodiac. So first up is going to be Pisces, because hey, it's my birthday. Why not start with where we're at now, right now, excuse me. So this is Pisces season. I'm going to start with Pisces. So I have the deck here, and just so people can see, these are the card backs. And the reason for the card backs is that for me, working with affirmations is like having a dialogue with the universe. And so, long story short, my brand archetype is the magician. So the magician as a brand archetype likes things like the universe in terms of imagery or the cosmos. So there's that. And then the coloring is representing the upper chakras, right? Because when you're working with affirmations, you're using your voice, right? If you're speaking them aloud, or you're holding them in your consciousness. So the coloring represents the upper chakras. Okay. So I will be making a separate video that shows all the cards if you are interested in that. But for this video, because I didn't want it to be terribly long, is I just wanted to really focus on pulling a card for every zodiac sign in a lightning round kind of format. So I'm shuffling the cards. You can clearly see I'm shuffling the cards. So there's a couple of ways that I like to shuffle the cards, you know, overhand. And I have my table next to me, so sometimes I use the table. So I'll do that too as well. Because there's a particular way I shuffle oracle cards, if I could get the word out. There are a particular way I shuffle oracle cards, which is different than how I typically shuffle either tarot cards or playing cards. So I'm doing a little bit of that. And then I'm just going to go to overhand just so you could see it on camera. Okay. Alright, so now what I'm going to do, because I'm feeling like the cards are shuffled pretty well, I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck because that's something I like to do. And I'm going to cut it away from me even though I'm doing zodiac cards or cards for each zodiac sign. And I'm starting with Pisces, but this is going to be for the Pisces collective. So each sign is going to be for the collective of that particular sign. Okay, so now I have the cards reassembled. So what I'm really going to do is I'm just going to basically pull one card right off the top and just do that consecutively for each sign. So starting with Pisces. So if you're a Piscean, this is your card. Oh, and it's a great card. So here we have, I create positive changes in my life. So that's the affirmative statement. This card is the stork. Right? So if you're familiar with Lenormand, there's a little bit of a backstory here. When I was creating the deck, I also wanted to work with some Lenormand memes I had created way back in the day. So I thought this was a wonderful way to bring that project back into circulation, or to use it or repurpose it in a new way. So if you're familiar with Lenormand, this is the stork card. So stork, as a symbol, represents change, but it also represents change for the better or positive change and improvement. So for us, if you're a Piscean like myself, this is a time where the focus or intention could be on how you could change your life for the better. What kind of improvements do you want to make, right? So as a Piscean, since this is my birthday, what I like to do on my birthday is I do what I call a deep dialogue. I call it a deep dialogue day with the universe, right? Like I talked about having a conversation with the universe, right? So it's a deep dialogue day, or that it's a day of inner inquiry, which means I just probe questions. You know, so the question I'm asking myself, now that I'm 56, I turned 56 today, is what is the vision that I have for my life at 56? What do I want my life to look like at 56? What do I want out of life at 56, right? So those are the questions I'm sitting with today. But it's all about improvement. What could I improve at being, you know, hopefully older and wiser? You know, what improvements would I like to make in my life, right? What changes would I like to implement for the better? Now, some other meanings. This card can also represent a change in location, like a geographic move or change in location. So it could just be a matter of, you know, moving. And as I'm saying that, I'm also hearing in my mind a song by Bananarama called Moving On. So for some of us, this might be the season to either move, like picking up stakes and changing geographic location, or just moving on from a situation that is no longer serving or no longer supporting you, right? So there's that. Last thing I will say about the stork before moving on is that for me, this is a card about expectations, right? Because when I was a child, I had heard the myth that storks delivered babies, right? So for expectant mothers, this is where I'm going with that. Expectant mothers, they would be getting the delivery of their newborn child, right? So with that, this card can represent expectations. What are you expecting? Either of yourself right now at this time, other people at this time, or out of life, just generally speaking. What are your expectations? This might be a nod for you to really take a good look either at your expectations, what they are, or managing your expectations, right? Especially if they are focused on other people and what other people can and can't do. Now, playing on the delivery part, right? If you are focused on your expectations of others, then this might be a matter of you being more realistic about what those people can deliver in terms of your expectations. So that is this card. I create positive changes in my life. Okay, so that is Pisces. So now we'll move on to Aries. Aries is the next sign. So for you, this is your card. I am awake and alert. So the reason I created this card is because of the moments when I wake up and I realize I am not a morning person anymore. I used to be when I worked out in the world. But now I work mostly nights, so I'm not a morning person. I'm turned into a night owl, or maybe I was always one, right? And but this card for me, the affirmation is one I would use when I was waking up in the morning and I'm feeling fatigued still. So I would tell myself that I am awake and alert. Now here's the other thing about affirmations I want to say, and I'll get back to the card. Is if you're working with affirmations and you can't get past the thought, once the thoughts that come up when you say the affirmations, here's something you could try. And I learned this from a man named Michael Loescher in his book, The Law of Attraction. He would say that if your subconscious thinking is saying things like, oh, that can't be true, you can't do that, whatever, whatever, then what you could say instead is, I am in the process of, and then you say the rest of the affirmation. And he says, because your subconscious mind won't counter that, because it will be true whether you are doing it for the first day or you've been doing it for 10 years. It will always be true, right? Okay, so now back to the card for Aries. So this is just really about waking up, right? So this could be a time where you are waking up. And when I'm talking about waking up, I'm not talking about waking up out of bed like in the image. I'm talking about like awakening, like you're coming to some realization about some truth for you. And interesting, because if you are somewhat astrologically fluent, then you know in a solar chart, Aries is the first sign, and or occupies the first house, right? The sign on the first house. So it usually represents things like the ego, the self, that kind of thing. So it could just be, maybe you are waking up to some truth about who you are as a person, right? But this is just all about awakening. So I tend to think of that as revelation, truth. It could be like in the spiritual sense, if you are going through an awakening process, you know, just be mindful of the symptoms. That has not happened to me, so I'm not familiar with that, but I'm just feeling like that's what's coming through in the moment to say. So maybe just, you know, being more aware of the symptoms that come with a spiritual awakening, and maybe even the fact that the person on the card is in bed, maybe making sure that you are getting some much needed rest. So that's what I would say to Aries. Next sign is Taurus. I have to try and remember the order of the signs. So for Taurus people, we have, I honor the commitments I make to myself and to others. So now, I said some of the cards have a Lenormand vibe or bent to them. This is the Ring card in Lenormand, right? So Ring is all about agreements, commitments, promises, pledges. I have in the image, you know, a couple exchanging rings during a wedding ceremony, right? That's really, basically this card is saying, like, be mindful of the commitments that you make to other people, but also be mindful of the commitments that you make to yourself. And I have found, for me personally, and this is where you become older and wiser, that it was easier for me to honor the commitments I made to other people versus the commitments I made to myself. And at some point I had to say, why is it that I'm putting other people so clearly before myself? Why is it that I'm so willing to, you know, do for other people, but not honor the things that I say and that I want to do for myself? Why would I not do that, right? So it gave me a chance to kind of sit with that and maybe change that dynamic, because there's probably a story there, right, that I needed to probe and revise and edit. Okay, but in this particular case, back to the card, it's really just being mindful about the commitments that you are making to other people and yourself and honoring them, right? Now, this could also be about, how committed are you in your relationship to either yourself, right? This could be talking about the relationship you're having with yourself or the relationships that you're having to others. How committed are you, right? Or it could be like there's going to be a change in status regarding a commitment, right? Meaning like we're becoming more serious in our role in that particular commitment, right? But for my Taurus friends out here, this is all about honoring the commitments that you make to yourself and to other people, right? There's that. I was feeling like I was done. I'm not done. I'm also being said to say that this may be an opportunity to look at some of the cycles, and that's a nice way of saying patterns, in some of your relationships, right? Because the ring is a circular symbol, right? And it also can represent a cycle or a pattern because it goes around and around. So this may be a time to examine some cycles or patterns that are taking place. And then with that, it's not just about having the awareness about what would you be willing to do differently so that you have a different and maybe possibly a better experience in those relationships. So that is this card. Okay, so now we've done Pisces, Aries, Taurus, and now we're doing Gemini, trying to make sure I remember the order. So for Gemini, we have my self-care is a priority. So this is really just about wellness, well-being, right? What are you doing to make sure that you are taking great care of yourself, right? This is all about self-care. Now, in the image, we have a woman who is having a spa day, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go out and have a spa day, but you could make your day like a spa day at home, right? So what would you be willing to do to kind of take better care of yourself in your own environment? So this reminds me of the time when funds were tight and I couldn't go away on vacation. So I got this idea from Oprah Winfrey a long, long time ago, where a woman had decided that she was going to go on vacation, but she was going to stay home. These days we call that a staycation, right? And so she was going to do a spiritual retreat. And so she just made her environment a spiritual retreat. She made the intention of telling people around her that she was not going to be available for however long the retreat was going to be for herself. And then she did all the things that she wanted to do, like spiritual activities, spiritual practices, things like that. But that was her way of taking care of herself, right? So something of a similar nature. So if you can't take some time to go away, maybe because of resources, then, work with the resources that you have, right? And pamper yourself. This is about taking care of yourself. Because here's the truth. If you take better care of yourself, if you're a caretaker, then that enables you to take better care of the people who need you in the role that you are performing, right? So that's just something to consider. How can you take better care of yourself? Because when you do so, you either allow people through your demonstration to see the importance of self-care, or that you show up better for the people that you need to take care of, right? And as I'm wrapping up this card, I'm also being said to say it's important for those of you who do spend so much time taking care of other people not to neglect yourself. Sometimes when we put ourselves last on others, that can be a form of self-neglect, right? And we don't want to do that. So again, my self-care is a priority. How can you make that more of a priority, right? Okay. Gemini. Okay, so now we have Cancer. The card for you is I am at peace with my past. So now the image has an hourglass. So this could be about timing, right? So, the first thing that comes to my mind is the expression that timing is everything, right? But this could just be about taking a look at a period in time and making peace with it. Now, this could be about decisions made in the past and coming to some place of resolution about that. I'm being shown myself, so sometimes I see imagery in my mind as I'm talking, and so I'm seeing myself, and so I'm being reminded of the time where I left my job at the time to go into business full-time. And it started really slowly, and it got me to question the decision I had made, right? And so every time I went to this point in time in terms of thinking about the decision and maybe I should have decided differently, that kind of thing, I was still in the past, right? And what I was doing was I was robbing myself of being in the present moment because I didn't like where I was. So it was easier for me to revisit the past, but I couldn't change it, right? The decision had already been made. So the only thing I could do was make peace with it. And so it could just be a matter of, do you need to come to some acceptance about something that's been done in the past, right? Something that you can't change, but you can learn from it. That's the thing. You may not be able to change it, but you can learn from it so you don't have to repeat it again. So again, this is just about making peace with something from the past, and what would you be willing to do so that you can have peace. So that is for Cancer. Okay, so now we have, making sure we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so next card is Leo. I love this card. Okay, so the card that I pulled for Leo is All is Well. So this is a great affirmation to work with. If you're starting to work with affirmations and you don't know where to start, All is Well is a great one. And I can't take credit for this. Some of the affirmations that I am using, I got from my beloved Louise Hay. I refer to her like that, like she knew me, or like we knew each other, right? But her work played a huge role or part in my personal and spiritual growth and development. I have her book Heal Your Body, which is a wonderful book to have, and I also have her book Heal Your Life, which is a great book to have. I also have on CD her book on affirmations. So she has played a huge part in my work with affirmations. So I thought it only right and fair to include some of her affirmations because they mean so much to me. Okay, so now, All is Well, right? This is a great affirmation to have when it just represents you being in a good place, right? All is well. Everything is great. That kind of thing. But now, she's in a field, right? So this could just represent, taking some time and energy to be outdoors more as the weather is now getting warmer. It's really great here where I am in South Carolina at this point in time. I can't believe it's March and the weather is so awesome, right? But as time goes on, to find yourself spending time outdoors, right? And just, I'm looking at the image here, and she's really at peace, but she's also about, this card can be about mindfulness, about really being present in your environment, like taking time to really tune in. As I'm talking, I'm hearing outside the birds chirping, like really paying attention to what's going on in your environment. Really be one with the environment, right? But just being out in nature. Now, as I'm saying that, it's also about maybe accepting your own personal nature, meaning like who you are as a person, and just understanding like who you are in this moment is well, right? So everything is good, right? Now, if you're a magical practitioner, because I sometimes talk about having a magical practice in my daily divination posts, if you are a magical practitioner, you will notice possibly that she is standing in a field of lavender, right? So this could just be about working with lavender. So now, the ways that I work with lavender is I burn lavender incense, and I do it in a way that calms me, right? So this is the other aspect of the card. Maybe just coming to some, it's a nice, another word to use in place of peace, but it could just represent like, what do you need to do to calm yourself? What do you need to do to kind of bring more relaxation into your life, right? The other thing that I do with lavender, I use essential oil and I diffuse it, right? So there's a scent of lavender in the air, and it's really great for, maybe when you're about to go to sleep for the night, or you're taking a nap, or, that kind of thing. I used to use a lavender spray on my sheets that I used to get at a particular store. I believe it was Bath and Body Works, that's it, right? They had a lavender and vanilla spray that I just loved, right? And so I would spray it on my sheets before retiring for the night. It was a great thing. But all of that to say is that lavender is great for relaxation. So if you don't work with lavender specifically, then maybe the message here is about, finding ways to relax and unwind, right? Similar to the other card about making self-care a priority, right? How can you unwind? How can you unplug from maybe a very busy life, right? To relax just a little bit. And just knowing the affirmation all is well, and just knowing that the things that you are unplugging from will still maintain themselves until you return to them. Yeah? Okay, so that is all as well. So that's for Leo. Okay, so after Leo, we have Virgo. So for you Virgo people, we have I radiate positivity. Okay, so now this card is based on the Sun from Tarot and the Sun from Lenormand. And really, both those cards are about happiness, right? So this is about, you understanding that happiness is an inside job. I know it's cliche, but it's so true, right? I've learned from my own personal experience, and now remember, I can say this being 56. I'm probably a little bit older than some of you watching this video, right? So I can talk about this from that place, right? That I used to spend a lot of time thinking that externals would make me happy. Like I would be happy when this happened, or I would be happy when I got that, this, that, and the other thing, right? But then I realized, no, that happiness is something I bring to those circumstances, those situations, those conditions, right? It's not incumbent on the external to make me happy. It's about me bringing a sense of happiness to that, right? So there's that. So this card can represent happiness. It can also represent confidence, right? I love her image. When I saw this image, because all the images are curated, I did not create them myself, but I did modify each one, right? So what I did was I just loved the happiness on her face, and then what I did was I filtered it with a yellow filter to kind of represent the sun and solar energy, right? But this is also about, shining your brilliance, your radiance, what makes you you, right? This is about exuding that kind of energy out into the world, right? But this card is also about achievement and understanding that, you are always striving to do your best, right? So this card could also be about you achieving something and basking in the afterglow of that achievement, right? So this is I radiate positivity, right? So it just represents like how can you bring positivity to your things rather than looking for positivity from those things, right? So that's for Virgo. So after Virgo, we have, that's where I have to pause and think about the signs. So after Virgo, we have, I believe it's Libra. So for Libra people, okay. So if you're a Libra, this is your card. So we have the affirmation, I am always growing and developing. Yeah. And so the image is of a tree. So now the tree in Lenormand, because this is where I derived this from, represents growth and development, right? But it's also a card that also can talk about health and healing. So we have that wellness aspect being brought back in for Libra people, right? So this card can just be about like, what are you doing to foster a greater sense of growth and development? Or that it could be about you acknowledging the growth and development that you have reaped over time, right? Because the other thing about this card is that tree is a symbol that represents things that grow and develop over time, right? So this could just be a matter of taking a look at the growth and development you've made over a significant period of time. Now, this could also be about taking the time to plant new seeds with the understanding that any growth and development from any seeds, and that's a nice way of saying intentions, that you plant now, and planting metaphorically, it's going to take time for those things to grow and develop, right? Now, since Libra is the sign that usually is most often connected to relationships, right? Then this could just be a matter of, taking a look at the connections that you're making. This is a pun for the trees, and this is about the branches on a tree. So this could be familial relationships, right? This would be extended family, or maybe relationships in which you are extending yourself to other people and they're extending themselves to you, that kind of thing. And making sure that there's balance, right? Libras are all about having balance, right? So making sure that you are not overextending yourself, right? That need for well-being, making sure that you're not overextending yourself. And if you are, what can you do to kind of maybe prune that? I'm sticking with the gardening, planting tree metaphor, right? So what would you need to do to prune that if you're finding yourself overextended, right? But again, growth and development, what are you learning as a result of experiencing overextension, right? And then the last thing I will say, if you are moving into a new phase or stage in your life, then this could be about branching out, right? The metaphorical branching out, you know, and so just maybe going beyond what you have become accustomed to, maybe because it's comfortable or it's familiar, right? Playing on the idea of family tree, it's familiar, right? What would you be willing to do to kind of branch out, move beyond that, right? So that is, I am always growing and developing for Libra. Next sign is Scorpio. I love this. Okay, so this card for Scorpio people is, I choose to be solution focused. I choose to be solution focused. Okay, so now this card is from Lenormand, and it's the key card, right? So the key is all about solutions, answers, but this card could also be, this is a time period of moving into maybe discovery or revelation or breakthrough. This would say that this is an important time for you because the key represents things that are important, things that are certain, or things that are vital, right? And so I'm also playing on the idea of vitality, right? So this could just be like you being on the receiving end to an answer or a solution to something that you've been experiencing, right? And how can you take that solution and put it to work, right? But this could just be a key period in your growth and development, right? I'm going with the idea about the discovery or the revelation or breakthrough, right? So that is for you. That is for Scorpio. Hi, I'm back. Full disclosure. I noticed as I was doing the card for Scorpio that it said that I had 1 minute left on my camera time, so I had to end the video there so I could go into the camera and remove some existing files that I no longer needed. I didn't realize they were on there still, so I had to do that. So now I'm back, and so we're going to pick up where we left off. So we just finished Scorpio, so the next sign is Sagittarius, and so here's the card I have for Sagittarians. This is one of my favorite ones in the deck. Wonderful new doors are opening for me all the time. So basically, this is a card about opportunity. If you look at the image, there is a man who's wearing a business suit, right? He's got his briefcase with him, and he's opening the door out of a number of doors, right? So this could just represent not just one opportunity, because that's what doors symbolize for me. They represent opportunity. So not just maybe one, but multiple opportunities, and then you have to choose which you think is the best opportunity for you in the moment, right? Yeah, so it's about like you may be faced with the idea of doing the pros and the cons with each opportunity being faced. Is there a particular window of time with one opportunity versus the others? You know, it's like one has a shorter window of time in terms of making a decision than others, that kind of thing. But there's maybe multiple things to kind of factor into your decision-making process, especially if you're faced with more than one. The other thing this card can mean is that it's time to either close a door, meaning end a chapter in your life, so that another door can open, or that you are embarking on a new phase by opening a door, meaning stepping into something new. So it's either ending something with the idea that it allows you to kind of then embark on the next leg, stage, or phase in your life journey, or that you are contemplating opening a door, meaning starting something new, and it's about taking that all-important first step, right? So now let's talk about the idea with the attire. Right, so he's wearing a business suit. So this could be maybe something either work or business related, or that it's something that is like personal business that you need to attend to, right? So we have the business out in the world, our public business, right, so to speak. But we also have our own personal business. So it could just be a matter of what is there in terms of maybe personal business that you need to attend to, right? But it could also be about moving through life with a greater sense of being suited for something, right? Something that is more suited to you. So it's the idea of maybe leaving something or entering into something new. Maybe factor into the idea, how suited is this for me? Or how suited am I for it? Right? Two ways of looking at that. But this card again, wonderful new doors are opening for me all the time. So that is for Sagittarius. Next card is for Capricorn. So what do we have for Capricorn, people? Oh, I say this about all the cards, right? If you notice, I love them, but I do love every single card. So for you, if you are Capricorn, this card is, I gently bring my awareness back to the present moment. So there's a little bit of a story with the card. So this card was inspired by Eckhart Tolle and The Power of Now. So I will confess that when I first read The Power of Now, it was a struggle. I found it very dense. So the one takeaway I did have from the book, because even when, and there's a lesson in that, right? Even when you are having difficulty moving through a book that you know on some level has some significance, yeah? I knew it was significant because I was part of a book group, you know, and that was the book that we were discussing, right? So I knew that I was setting the intention, like, this is important, the material is important to me on some way, but I just had a hard time getting through it. But there was a takeaway. The takeaway was Eckhart Tolle's idea about thinking, right? And, you know, the idea about always being in the present moment. So knowing when you're straying from the present moment with either past thinking or future thinking. So I put that into my meditative practice, which is why the figure on the card is meditating, right? So it's about, like, when I would sit in the silence and meditate, I would become aware of when my thoughts were drifting away from the present. And I would say to myself, I'm now moving into past thinking, let me come back to the present. Or I'm moving into future thinking, let me come back into the present, right? So it was just a way for me to be more mindful. This card can be about mindfulness, but to be more mindful about remaining in the present moment and being aware how easy it could be to drift away from being in the present moment, right? And every time I'm either in past thinking or future thinking, more often than not, it's robbing me of being in the present moment and appreciating what's going on in the here and now, right? So there's that. So now, it could really mean that, based on the image, that you, it might best serve you to cultivate a more meditative practice. So now, it doesn't have to be sitting in a lotus position like the man on the card. That is my preferred way, but it's not the only way. Since he's outdoors, it could be finding a more active type of meditation, the one that puts you outdoors, right? I know for some people, gardening, working with their hands, can be a more meditative process, right? Something that you can really disconnect from, that you don't have to be so focused on, although it would probably still help to be mindful, right? But something that you don't have to really be focused on doing, so that it can enable you to kind of experience a different level of awareness, right? Being in a different space of consciousness, right? That kind of thing. So about cultivating that kind of meditative practice. So getting you to think about, like, what type of meditation would best serve me, right? So there is that to also consider. But I also could just say, this is a time for you to consider, what are you meditating on? You know, what are you ruminating on? Is it in your best interest to be ruminating and meditating on those particular things? You know, or is there a need for a change in focus on what you're meditating on and ruminating on, right? But it could also be a time of, because I'm just getting this, and this was not an intention in the card, but it makes me think of, like, the Hermit from Tarot, right? So this may be a time to kind of withdraw, you know, take a time out, you know, a time away from the externals that are currently going on around you, and how would that best serve and support you, right? It kind of would be the idea of a renewal, rejuvenation, right? So that you can return to those things, maybe with a different level of awareness, right? Because you've kind of disconnected from them, right? But again, the card is, I gently bring my awareness back to the present moment. I just love this card. Okay. Right, so that's Capricorn. So now we have one sign left. That's Aquarius. Okay, so if you're an Aquarian, thank you so much for hanging out this long for your card. And your card is, and I love this card, is I walk my talk. Yeah. So this is really, the message here is about practicing what you preach, right? Basically, in a nutshell, walking your talk is about demonstrating, you know, putting into action what it is you believe to be true, either thoughts, ideas, theories, concepts. How are you practically applying them to your life so that your life works better, right? I'm from a movement called Unity. And so Unity is just new thought. But what I really love about Unity in particular is that it equips me with the tools, the mental tools, right? Because I call it like spiritual psychology in a way, right? But it introduces ideas for me to think about. But it's also about taking those ideas, those principles, and putting them into practice, right? If you don't do that, no matter what your spiritual practice is, right? No matter what your path is, your lane is, no matter what it is, if you are just absorbing knowledge but you're not ever putting it into the practice, and it just becomes a wonderful heady exercise, right? It's funny I'm saying that for Aquarians who are air signs, right? And my moon's in Aquarius, so I know what I'm talking about here. Okay, but that just becomes a heady exercise and maybe something even egoic, right? But the idea here is to take those ideas and put them into practice so that you get to see how they improve your life, right? So that's about walking your talk, allowing your life to be your demonstration, right? You know, in my former spiritual circles, we used to say, your life is your witness, right? Now that I'm in New Thought, we say that your life is your demonstration, right? It's the same thing, just worded differently or stated differently, but it's the same thing, right? Now the other thing here with this card, it could be like this is a season, right? I'm noticing that there are leaves here, right? So that's about fall, autumn, you know, the leaves falling, change in seasons, right? What changes are you needing to make at this season in your life, right? The idea of walking, it makes me think of Eight of Cups from Tarot, about walking away from something. Walking away from things that are no longer serving and supporting you. Would you be willing to do that, right? It's about maybe possibly turning over a new leaf as you do it, right? So that is the idea here with I walk my talk. And on that note, that concludes my birthday offering to each and every one of you watching this video. Thank you so much for spending the time with me, by the way. For my birthday, this is a fun way to spend my birthday. So again, we have worked with the Re-Language Affirmation Oracle cards, and I will be making another video going through each of the cards because only 12 of them showed up, right? So if you're wondering what the other cards look like, that would be your opportunity to look at that. And I will be making this deck available to the public in the near future, so stay tuned for that. Again, this is James Mitchell. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of my birthday with me, and I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and take care.